When you first get the itch to grow something that doesn't belong in your zip code, your first instinct is usually to build up. You look at the snow on the ground, and you think you need to construct a fortress against it. I see folks doing this every year. They go to the big box store and buy those flimsy plastic greenhouses, or maybe they build a frame out of PVC pipe and wrap it in expensive greenhouse plastic. Then comes the heating. You run hundreds of feet of extension cords across the wet grass, plugging in space heaters or heat lamps, trying to keep the air temperature just a few degrees above freezing. You spend your nights watching the weather forecast, worrying if the power might go out, worrying if the wind will tear the plastic. You are fighting the winter, and winter usually wins. It is an exhausting way to grow food. The problem isn't your dedication. The problem is that you are fighting a battle on the surface, where the weather is most violent. When you build a structure on top of the frozen ground, you are surrounding your plants with cold air on all sides. You have to pay for every degree of heat you add. That is not a system. That is a constant emergency. I did it that way for years, and I spent more money on electricity than the fruit was ever worth. It wasn't until I stopped looking at the air and started looking at the dirt that things changed. We tend to think of the ground as cold because the surface freezes, but that is just the skin. Deep down, the earth is a battery. It holds the summer heat long after the snow falls. By ignoring that battery, you are working harder than you need to. What if you didn't need the heaters? What if you could grow a fig or a lemon tree in January without a single extension cord? The solution I found didn't cost me thousands of dollars. It cost me about $30 and some sweat. It's not a new invention. It's an old method that relies on a simple truth. If you want to escape the cold, you don't build higher walls. You dig a hole. This is about working with the thermal mass of the planet rather than trying to heat the open air. It is quiet. It is invisible to the neighbors, and it changes the way you look at winter. I call this system a sun trap pit, though you might hear it referred to as a pit greenhouse or even a walipini in certain circles. The name matters less than the physics behind it. The fundamental shift here is realizing that the earth beneath your feet is not just solid matter to be built upon, but a massive thermal battery that charges up all summer long. When you build a standard greenhouse on the surface, you are essentially building a tent in a freezer. You have a thin layer of plastic separating your plants from wind chill and sub-zero temperatures. But when you dig, you enter a different world. In most of the United States, once you get below the frost line, usually about 3 or 4 feet deep, the soil temperature stabilizes. It hovers around 50 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, regardless of whether there is a blizzard or a heat wave up above. That 50-degree baseline is the secret engine of this entire system. If you are trying to keep a lemon tree alive in February, starting from 50 degrees is a whole lot easier than starting from 10 below zero. You aren't asking the sun to do all the heavy lifting. You're just asking it to top off the tank. By sinking the structure into the ground, we use the Earth's mass to moderate the swings. The soil walls absorb heat during the day when the sun pours in, and then slowly release that heat back into the pit at night when the temperature drops. It works exactly like a stone hearth in an old farmhouse, radiating warmth long after the fire has gone down. You are trading the volatility of the air for the stability of the ground. The best part about this approach is that the primary building material is completely free. It's just the dirt you already own. When I tell people I built a tropical growing space for $30, they assume I scavenged lumber or used trash. But the reality is that 90% of the structure is simply the hole itself. The $30 went entirely to the glazing, the lid that lets the light in. Everything else is just geometry and labor. You don't need concrete footings, you don't need pressure-treated framing for the walls, and you certainly don't need a heating system. You are building a pocket of resistance against the winter. And unlike a high tunnel that creates a monthly electric bill, the pit asks for nothing once it is dug. It sits there, quiet and efficient, doing its job simply by existing. it changes your relationship with the cold because you stop fearing the air temperature and start trusting the earth temperature. Now, we pick up the shovel. This is the hardest part of the entire system. But the good news is you only have to do it once. You are not building a temporary structure. You are landscaping a permanent feature. For your first attempt, do not try to build a cathedral. I recommend starting with a footprint of 4 feet by 8 feet. Why? Because standard glazing materials, whether it's old sliding glass doors or polycarbonate sheets, usually come in those dimensions. You build the hole to fit the lid, not the other way around. You need to dig down at least 3 to 4 feet. This is non-negotiable. If you stop at 2 feet, you are still in the freeze zone. You have to get deep enough so that the bottom of the pit is touching that stable 50-degree earth we talked about. As you dig, don't haul that dirt away. Pile it up on the north side of your hole to create a berm. This serves 2 purposes. It acts as a windbreak against those northerly winter gales, and it raises the back wall of your pit. You want the north side higher than the south side, creating a slope. That dirt you are sweating over is your insulation. Bank it up thick and pack it down. There is one critical detail that ruins most beginners: water. If you just dig a hole in clay soil, you haven't built a greenhouse. You've built a bathtub. When the autumn rains come, it will fill up, and your trees will drown. You must check your drainage before you plant a single thing. I dig a small test hole in the bottom of the pit and fill it with water. If it doesn't drain in an hour, I dig a deeper sump pit in the center, about 2 feet deeper than the floor, and fill it with coarse gravel. This gives the water somewhere to go while it slowly percolates out. It's a boring step, but if you skip it, the system fails. You are creating a living space below grade, so you have to manage the hydrology just as much as the temperature. Once the hole is dug and the drainage is set, you need to put a lid on it. This is the trap part of the equation. This is where that $30 budget comes into play. If you go out and buy brand new double-paned greenhouse glass, you have defeated the purpose of this project before you even started. You need to scavenge. The best material I have found for this is simpler than you think: old sliding glass doors or shower doors. People throw these away constantly. I found mine at a local Habitat resale store for $5 a sheet, but I've also seen them sitting on the curb on trash day. They are tempered, they are tough, and they let the light in just fine. If you can't find glass, a sheet of twin-wall polycarbonate is the only thing I would recommend buying new. But even then, you can often find scraps from larger construction jobs. The trick isn't just slapping a window over the hole. It is about the angle. You have to remember that the winter sun is lazy. It stays low on the horizon, dragging itself across the southern sky. If you lay your window flat on the ground like a skylight, that low winter sun will hit the glass and bounce right off. You want the light to penetrate, not reflect. To do that, you need to tilt your glazing towards the south. This is why we piled that dirt berm on the north side in the previous step. You rest the top of your frame on that high berm and the bottom on the ground level, creating a slope. You are aiming for an angle that catches the sun head-on at noon in December. You don't need a protractor or a degree in mathematics for this. Just look at where the sun is at lunchtime in the dead of winter and aim your glass at it. It usually ends up being a steep pitch, somewhere around 45 degrees or steeper depending on where you live. This steep angle does 2 things. First, it acts like a funnel for those precious photons, driving them deep into the pit to hit the back wall. Second, it sheds snow. When a heavy snow falls, you want it to slide right off so it doesn't block the light or crush your glass. The final detail here is the seal. You can have the best glass and the perfect angle, but if the wind can whistle underneath the frame, you will lose all your heat in an hour. I use heavy stones or sandbags to weigh down the edges of the frame where it meets the earth. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to be airtight. You are essentially building a cold frame that draws from the earth's heat rather than the air's. When you lay that glass down and seal it tight, you have officially completed the trap. Now, the sun goes in, hits the dark soil at the bottom, turns into heat, and that heat is held captive by the earth and the glass. The sun is your engine during the day, but the night is where you win or lose the war. You have to understand a simple, brutal fact about glass and polycarbonate. They are terrible insulators. They are designed to let energy through, not keep it in. An old single-pane window has an R value of barely 1. That means, as soon as the sun dips below the horizon, all that heat you trapped in the soil wants to rush right back out into the freezing night sky. If you leave that glass uncovered, the physics will work against you. The heat inside the pit will radiate straight through the glazing, and by dawn, the temperature inside will be almost the same as the air outside. You will have a frozen lemon tree, and you will have wasted your time. You have to tuck the system in. It is as simple as that. Every evening, when the light starts to fade, I go out there with a stack of insulation. This doesn't need to be high-tech. I have used old wool blankets, sheets of rigid foam insulation I found at a construction site, and even bags of leaves. The goal is to put a heavy lid over the glass to trap the heat rising from the earth. You are essentially putting a hat on the chimney. I lay the insulation over the glazing, and then I throw a tarp over the whole thing to keep the moisture off. It takes me 2 minutes. That simple act, covering the glass, is the difference between a hard freeze and a cozy 50 degrees. Inside that dark, insulated pit, the earth slowly releases the warmth it soaked up all day, and the blanket keeps it right where the plants need it. But the danger isn't just the cold, it's the heat. This sounds crazy in January, but a sunny winter day can cook a plant inside a small space. If the sun is blazing and the outside air is 20 degrees, the inside of that pit can easily hit 90 or 100 degrees if you aren't careful. That kind of swing stresses the plants. It wakes them up when they should be resting, or it scorches their leaves. You have to be the thermostat. On those bright, clear winter days, you need to crack the lid. Prop the glass open just an inch or two to let the excess heat vent out. You are trying to maintain a steady, boring climate, not a roller coaster. You want to keep it cool enough that the plants stay dormant or slow growing, but warm enough that they never freeze. It becomes a rhythm, a daily chore that connects you to the weather. Open it up with your coffee in the morning, close it down before dinner. Now that the structure is holding heat, we have to talk about what actually lives in there. You aren't going to grow bananas in a 4-foot pit in Michigan unless you add supplemental heat. And that defeats the whole purpose of a passive system. You have to be realistic about what this microclimate offers. It is a cool, damp, protected space, not a tropical rainforest. The goal here isn't necessarily rapid growth in the middle of January. The goal is survival and a massive head start on spring. You are looking for plants that can handle the cool nights but need protection from the hard freeze. For me, the undisputed king of the sun trap pit is the fig tree. Figs are incredibly resilient. They naturally want to go dormant in the winter, shedding their leaves and sleeping through the cold. In a standard garden, a harsh winter kills them back to the ground, and they spend all summer just regrowing their wood instead of making fruit. In the pit, the roots stay cozy in that 50-degree soil, and the branches never see the killing frost. They might look like dead sticks in December, but come February, while the snow is still piled high outside, those buds will break. By the time your neighbors are just planting their peas, you will have a fig tree with a full canopy and fruit already setting. Citrus is the other crop that thrives down here, specifically the tougher varieties like Meyer lemons or kumquats. Unlike figs, they keep their leaves, so they need that light we fought so hard to capture with our angled glass. They will sit there in the pit, green and happy, while the world outside is gray. They won't grow fast during the darkest days. They just sort of pause. But they hold on to their fruit. The key with citrus in a pit is patience. You aren't trying to force a bloom. You are just keeping the engine idling until the days get longer. The biggest mistake people make once the plants are in is drowning them. You have to remember that evaporation down in a covered pit is almost non-existent. The wind isn't drying the soil, and the sun isn't baking it. If you water on a schedule like you do in the summer, you will rot the roots in a month. I check the soil by hand, digging my finger down a few inches. If it feels even slightly cool and moist, I walk away. In the dead of winter, I might only water once every 6 weeks. You want the soil to be living and sponge-like, not a swamp. It's a quiet, slow environment, and your care needs to match that pace. You do less, but you observe more. The real return on investment here isn't the money you save on a bag of lemons. It happens on a Tuesday morning in February, when the wind is howling and the ground is frozen hard as iron. You walk out to that pit, brush a layer of snow off the glass, and open the lid. A puff of warm, humid air hits your face, smelling like wet earth and green leaves. You reach down and pull a fresh fig, or a Meyer lemon that ripened while the rest of your garden was dead asleep. When you taste that fruit, you realize it is not just food. It is a stored piece of summer. It tastes different than what you buy at the store because it hasn't traveled 2,000 miles on a truck. It has been sitting right there in your backyard, waiting for you. That moment changes how you look at the grocery store. You realize you are a little less dependent on that supply chain. You didn't need the power grid to stay up to keep that tree alive. You didn't need a heater. You just needed the thermal mass of the earth and a piece of scavenged glass. There is a quiet confidence that comes from that. It is not about hoarding food or prepping for disaster. It is about building a system that works whether you are paying attention to it or not. You are trading anxiety for predictability. You stop looking at winter as an enemy to be fought and start seeing it as just another season to manage. You don't need to go out and dig up your entire backyard this weekend. You don't need to rent an excavator or buy a truckload of lumber. My advice is to start small. Just try one test pit. Find a spot that gets good southern light, maybe just 4 feet by 4 feet. Dig it deep, find an old storm window, and plant one hardy thing. See how the temperature holds. Watch how the snow slides off the glass. If it works, you can always dig another one next year. But for now, just pick up a shovel. It starts with one hole and a little bit of curiosity.